Hey, welcome back. So, today I'm going to share with you my testimony. While my whole life is one big testimony in of itself, I'll be focusing on when I started following Jesus. I'm focusing my testimony during this time because I learned so much from the Lord about myself, the Lord's intentions and plans in the spiritual realm, and got an even deeper understanding of the Bible, which led me to how I chose to live my life with Jesus in the center of it. Even though I have not had my best moments, I get to testify how the Lord brought me through it all. I even get to share the wisdom, lessons, and the healing moments that the Lord shared with me over the years. Starting off, I will give a little backstory on how I started following Christ. Back in 2018, I had started working at Lane Bryant. I went there because the Lord wanted me to work there. Now, I didn't want to work there because 2 years prior, I had applied to Lane Bryant and was rejected. So when I went and applied, I thought I was being smart and applied at a Lane Bryant that was a little further from me, like 30 minutes. But when I put the application in, the manager from the Lane Bryant I didn't want to go to called me wanting to interview me. Mind you, this manager rejected me 2 years prior. So I got interviewed by her twice. But the Lord wanted me there. So that's where I ended up being. It was during my time at Lane Bryant, the Lord wanted me to work on my mommy issues. By this point, the Lord had tried to get me to do it sooner, twice to be exact, but I disobeyed both times. But because I knew that the Lord wanted me to work on this, I finally did. I also knew that when I disobeyed twice before, I had to face the consequence of not working, which really got me frustrated and upset because I wasn't able to make any money. So, because I didn't want to go through that again, I actually obeyed him that time because I knew what I was going to do was going to be difficult. I've surrendered saying okay, and that this is going to be the hardest thing I ever have to do. Prepare me and be with me. Of course, I was able to continue my employment at Lane Bryant because I was finally able to surrender to his will and just finally obeyed him. While I was working, I started working on my mommy issues, and particularly with the abuse I faced with my mom. I was in the beginning process of healing, which this whole process was lighter compared to what happened later on. But then I eventually had to talk to my mom about this. Luckily, the conversation was good. There was no problems, and I had accomplished this first stage of healing with my mom. Going into 2019, I transferred from the Lane Bryant I was at to the one I originally applied for because my manager was off and a little vindictive. So there was just no peace and harmony with her. So I just transferred instead of staying or quitting. After some time working at the new Lane Bryant, that store manager left and we ended up getting a new one. After like a month or so with the new store manager, I ended up getting promoted to being a part-time key holder. During this time of with everything going on, I was continuing my healing process, eventually dealing with the potential of my grandfather passing away. So emotionally, I was going through a lot. Simultaneously, I was also a recent college graduate and I was applying to jobs with either one of my degrees, either with criminal justice or business administration. And I was just not succeeding at getting a job. And I ended up getting more and more frustrated with when it came to job applications and job interviews. I continuously went to career services back at Goldie Beacon, which is where I went and got my degree in business administration to update my resume and work on my interviewing skills to the point that I improved so much and I became flawless according to one person who did a mock interview of me. But I still wouldn't get hired. Then there was one week I did my first fast by myself. I fasted on three things that I was praying to the Lord for. I wanted to go back to school and get my master's degree, so I asked what school to go to and what I should study. I wanted to know what career I should go into and where to apply. Then I prayed lastly, I prayed for marriage. I prayed that the Lord would pick my husband for me. This were the three things I fasted on for a week. It was either during this fast or after the fast that the store manager threatened to hit me. Now this was quite disorienting because the Lord was healing me, so I didn't have my usual angry responses. But I acknowledge that the Lord allowed it to happen. Not only that, but that He gave me my job as a manager. You see, when my manager threatened me, I was thinking about quitting because I didn't deserve to go through this. But as I was thinking about it, I had two preceding reasons to stay. The first reason was that I had to pay bills and other responsibilities that was going on. For example, I did still have a student loan that I had. A student loan for when I was living in a dorm at Goldie Beacom. And so I would need the money for that. And then the second reason would be that there were things that I was trying to going into the future. And money was a huge determining factor in my future plans as well. Even though those were immediate, very strong reasons for me to stay at Lane Bryant, that is not what kept me there. The actual reason was the reality that the Lord gave me my job. So who am I to walk away from what the Lord has given me? So I stayed at Lane Bryant. I went through continuous harassment. That it went from just the store manager to some of the employees harassing me as well. But through it all, the Lord wanted me to honor my manager's authority. Which is crazy, right? Honor someone who's doing wrong. But there was a reason why. In it, I learned to keep my focus on the Lord, despite my manager's actions. One time, my manager was messing around with my schedule, and the schedule wasn't published until I got home from work. When I saw the schedule, I got so angry. I was going to lose it and cuss her out. I even planned to drive her all the way back to work so I could cuss her out. I was so done. Like, stick a fork in me, I'm done. But I didn't lose it right away. Instead, I decided to go out, think about it, so I went to Wawa and got coffee. And I kid you not, as I'm out driving to Wawa, the Lord came and met me. This car jumped right in front of me with the license plate saying Proverbs 3:5. I didn't know what the scripture said until I got home, but when I read it, the Lord was telling me not to lean on my own understanding and to trust Him and put it in His hands. This is what the scripture said: trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. When I read that scripture, immediately I calmed down and trusted Him with my manager. Then I went and dealt with it the Lord's way the next day. The entire time when I was going through suffering, I was being taught on how to go through it from the story of David. When Saul was trying to kill David and David still honored the authority that the Lord gave King Saul. This taught me how to be a God-fearing leader and a steward over what the Lord had given me, while still healing from the abuse of my mom and grieving the potential death of my grandfather, which I discovered how mean he actually was. I never knew this side of my grandfather, so I really had to grieve the loss of the relationship with my grandfather as well. Eventually, I did have another conversation with my mom, which did not go well. As I was talking to her, she got angry and defensive. I was confronting her on how she called me manipulative when I was growing up and that I didn't like it, in particular because I didn't know what it meant. In her argument, she brought up a dentist situation as a defense justifying her calling me manipulative. She apologized for calling me something that I didn't understand, but she stood firm on calling me manipulative and even called me manipulative in that moment. Of course, this gave me some more work to do on healing. and which eventually led me having to remember what was going on and what happened in the dentist's office. And evidently, the harassment I faced increased at work when my manager even grabbed me at work as well, which I had to deal with all of this as well. So I had stuff going on at work, stuff going on in my family, like on two sides of my family. Everything I faced was difficult. I became very conscious of who I could and could not trust at work. Dealing with the real issues in my family, I constantly kept praying for me to leave Lane Bryant, which didn't come right away. But one thing the Lord definitely did while I was at Lane Bryant was that He was blessing me. When I obeyed and honored my manager's authority, He blessed my efforts. Not only was I an exceptional employee and manager, I was also one of the top credit card getters in the store. The Lord even blessed the store when I would show up. So, like, for example, there would be nights where I was closing, and one of the other managers, I'm talking to her as I'm about to go put my stuff down and clock in. And she's telling me that it was a slow day, so I'm going to have a slow night. It's going to be a very long day. And I'm like, okay. So I go in the back, I put my stuff down, bracing myself for this very slow day. The next thing I know, I'm coming out. We're in the middle of a rush. It's so busy. And this happened on multiple occasions. It wasn't just one incident, it was multiple. The store really did prosper because of how I was obedient to the Lord. Because the store was making great sales and was prospering, the managers even got bonuses. So I got a bonus, like extra money in my paycheck every time I got a paycheck, which was really nice and was also very helpful. When it was time for me to go, it was November of 2019. So I had been at Lane Bryant for about a year, and all this has happened within 1 year. I prayed over my exodus from the store. I prayed for a smooth and quiet transition from the store with no problems, and the Lord granted that prayer. Because when I put my 2 weeks notice in, my store manager had went on vacation for 2 weeks. So my last 2 weeks in the store, I got to relax and even use my discount and shopped. My last day, she was supposed to come to the store for a floor set change, but by the grace of God, she never showed up. So I got to complete my last day in peace. When I left, I was so amazed at how I got through everything, in particular how the Lord covered and protected me. I was so impressed that I wanted to learn more about the Lord. I continued reading my Bible and praying. Now, when I worked at the post office, which was immediately after when I was working at Lane Bryant, I didn't get to fast as much. But going into 2020 before the pandemic, I continued learning about the Lord. At the time, I was laid off from the post office because I was only a seasonal employee. So I had a lot of free time on my hands. It was during the free time I officially got the invitation to follow Jesus, which we'll talk about more in part 2. But everything that I went through at Lane Bryant was like a pretest to see how well I understood what I was going through and understood what suffering was about. But even it gave me an introduction to who the Lord is and how He works. Now, this suffering is nothing compared to what I eventually went through for 5 years. But this was like the preliminary, the pre-test to the ultimate test. But it gave me the groundwork and the foundation of what I was going to learn and have to face. But that suffering got me into the position to learning more about the Lord. And it was because it got me into learning more about the Lord, the lessons from there followed me as a foundation that it got to grow more. Because one thing you should keep in mind, whenever you go through suffering is going to be that ground for you to build your relationship with the Lord. And if I didn't build my relationship with the Lord, I would not have gone through the more stressful, heartbreaking suffering that I went through. So each episode is going to be a building block. It's going to start off light, but then it eventually gets worse and worse and worse. But it's what I learned in that suffering that is part of my testimony. So, next time for part two, I'm going to talk about when I started learning more about the Lord, and this was going into the pandemic. So, the focus is going to be on the year 2020. So, until next time, I hope you have a great day.